Boys and girls, so we're going to continue our story today. So remember how after Jesus had prayed in the garden, Judas brought a mob of people to come and arrest Jesus. And they arrested Jesus. They brought him in front of the Sanhedrin. And while they were there, Peter told people 3 times that he did not know Jesus before the rooster crowed. So today we're going to talk about what happened to Jesus when he died, and it's called the Crucifixion. Now, boys and girls, Jesus was before the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin asked him this question. They asked him, "Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." And Jesus said, "Yes, I am." And so everybody got all angry, and they decided to bring Jesus to Pilate, to Pontius Pilate. And he stood there in front of Pilate, who was one of the big rulers and judges of the day. And Pilate asked Jesus this. He said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus replied, "Yes, I am." And then lots of people came and accused Jesus of this and that and all sorts of things. And the whole time that they asked Jesus these questions, Jesus stayed silent. And Pilate asked him, "Everyone is coming up with these. Are you just going to stay silent?" But Jesus did. And so Pilate thought, there still isn't enough to make this man Jesus, to put him into jail and to kill him. So Pilate came up with a plan. And there was another man named Barabbas who was in jail. And Pilate said to the people, "You can either take Barabbas, who is this bad criminal, and let him go free, or you can take Jesus and you can crucify him." And the people, they said, "Let Barabbas go free." And they said, "Crucify Jesus, crucify Jesus." So Pilate took his hands and he got a bowl of water and he washed his hands and he said, "I am washing my hands of this bad thing you want to do to Jesus." All right. And then he handed Jesus over to the guards. And the guards started to make fun of Jesus. They made a crown for his head. You know what they made the crown out of? Pokey branches. All right. So out of thorns, they put a crown of thorns on Jesus's head. And when they put the crown of thorns on Jesus's head, the thorns would have dug into Jesus's head and they would have made Jesus's head bleed. So there's our crown of thorns. And then when they put the crown, they also grabbed a robe, a purple robe, and they put it on Jesus and they pretended to bow down and say, "Oh, look the king. Oh, look the king." And Jesus just stood there and he took it. He didn't try to fight them back. And then it got worse. They took a big whip that had sharp points on the end and they took off Jesus's shirt and they whipped him 40 times, boys and girls. And his back would have started to bleed and he would have had blood coming down his head and on his back, and it would have been really terrible and really painful for Jesus. But boys and girls, do you remember why Jesus is doing this? Is he doing this just to die? No. Jesus is taking all the pain from the crown of thorns, all the pain from the whip on his back. He's taking that for us, for our sins, so that we can be with him one day. All right. Then, boys and girls, they took him out and they made him carry a cross. Can you draw a cross? It's like a lowercase t. They made him carry a cross up the hill. But because they were so bad to Jesus and they had hurt him with the whip and with the crown of thorns, he couldn't carry the cross all the way up to where they wanted to crucify him. So they took a man named Simon and they made Simon carry the cross up the hill for Jesus. And when they got to the top of the hill, they took Jesus's hands and they hammered Jesus' hands. Can you push into your hand? How would that feel if you had something go all the way through your hands? That would hurt a lot. So they nailed Jesus's hands to the cross. So boys and girls, you're actually going to trace your hands. My hands are too big for this. All right. And they put nails in Jesus's hands all the way through, and Jesus' hands would have been bleeding. And they would have nailed his feet to the cross too. And then they would have raised the cross all the way up. And during that time, boys and girls, Jesus hung on the cross, and it would have been very painful because he would have been just holding on by his hands. And then some people, they made a sign to go above on the cross. It said, King of the Jews. You can try to write that in there. King of the Jews. And they mocked him and they made fun of him. And people who would walk by, they spit at Jesus. And it was all very bad. And the soldiers, they took all Jesus's clothes and they took them off of him and they rolled dice so that they could figure out who would get to keep Jesus's clothes. And then boys and girls, at the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness started to come. And this was the middle of the day that Jesus was being crucified. And Jesus called out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because guess what, boys and girls? When Jesus was on that cross, God, his Father in heaven, turned his face away from Jesus and couldn't even look at him because all of the sins of the world were on Jesus. They were on Jesus, and God can't look at that sin, so he couldn't look at his son on the cross. And then Jesus said, I am thirsty. And so they didn't give him some nice, refreshing water. No, they dipped a sponge in some yucky vinegar, and they gave Jesus a drink from it. And when Jesus had finished drinking a little bit, he called out in a loud voice, it is finished. And Jesus died right there, boys and girls. Jesus was dead. And the guards wanted to make sure that he was dead. So they took a spear and they speared him into his side. And all of the blood and the water came out, and they knew that Jesus was dead. So they took Jesus off the cross, and there was another man who said, come and bury him in my tomb. So they took Jesus, they wrapped him up, and they put him in the tomb. But boys and girls, you should know that. Does Jesus stay dead? Does Jesus stay there? Does Jesus stay in that tomb? Did Jesus stay on that cross? No way. On the next video, I'm going to tell you about how Jesus did not stay dead. All right. Bye, boys and girls.